The city was still asleep. Atlanta's skyline glowed beneath the last traces of dawn as newspapers rolled off printing presses across the city. Ink dried. Stacks grew. Delivery trucks pulled away into the quiet morning. Some stories changed businesses. Some changed governments. And some changed lives forever. Sheridan Montgomery woke, believing the most dangerous part of the night had been resisting the man she'd loved for 12 years. She had no idea that before the sun had even risen, the entire city was about to learn what had happened on the Metropolitan Club terrace. One stolen photograph, one front-page headline, and one moment that neither she nor Elijah King ever intended the world to see. This is episode 3 of The Line We Cross. By morning, Atlanta's business circles were already feeding on the story. Sheridan saw the headline before she even finished her coffee. King Holdings CEO spotted getting close with new strategy hire. Below it, a photograph of Elijah's hand against her jaw. Her fingers tangled in his bow tie. The look between them impossible to mistake for professional. Sheridan closed the article immediately. Too late. Her phone began vibrating almost instantly. Texts, emails, missed calls. And Malcolm, especially Malcolm. She silenced the phone and stared out at the rain streaking across her apartment windows. This was exactly what she'd feared. Not the attraction. Not the feelings. Exposure. Because private emotions were manageable. Public scrutiny was not. Across town, Malcolm Montgomery stormed into King Holdings like a man arriving to collect a debt. Elijah's assistant barely got halfway through, "He's in a meeting," before Malcolm pushed past her. The penthouse office doors slammed open hard enough to rattle the glass walls. Elijah didn't flinch. He sat behind his desk reviewing Kingsley acquisition drafts, fountain pen still moving across the page even as Malcolm approached. "You're 3 minutes late," Elijah said calmly without looking up. "I expected you sooner." Malcolm threw the Financial Times onto the desk hard enough to send a crystal paperweight skidding. The gala photo stared back at both of them. "Explain this." Elijah finally looked up. No denial. No surprise. "Interesting." He set the pen down carefully before leaning back in his chair. "Your sister," he said evenly, "has very poor instincts when it comes to leaving compromising photo opportunities unfinished." Malcolm stared at him in disbelief. "That's your opening statement? You came here angry, not confused." "That's because I know you." Something flickered across Elijah's face at that. Old history. Old loyalty. Complication. Malcolm braced both hands against the desk. 12 years, Eli." Elijah's jaw tightened slightly. 12 years you called her off limits. "I did. And now." A long silence passed between them. Rain hammered softly against the penthouse windows behind Elijah. Then, "She's not 18 anymore." Malcolm laughed sharply without humor. "That your defense?" "No," Elijah stood slowly now, the movement controlled and deliberate. "My defense is that your sister walked into my company and outperformed half my executive team in 48 hours. That's not the point." "It's exactly the point." For the first time since Malcolm arrived, irritation broke through Elijah's composure. "She's brilliant, Malcolm." His voice lowered. "And I'm tired of everybody pretending she's fragile just because you love her." The room went still. Malcolm looked genuinely caught off guard by that. Elijah rarely lost emotional control, almost never raised his voice, which meant this mattered far more than Malcolm expected. "She's my family," Malcolm said more quietly now. "And you're my brother." Elijah stepped around the desk slowly. "Which is why nothing happened while she was younger." Malcolm crossed his arms. "But now you're suddenly okay ruining your friendship over this?" A pause. Then Elijah answered with devastating honesty. "I think I've been ruining myself trying not to." That shut the room up completely. Malcolm looked at him for a long moment after that. Really looked at him. And whatever he saw there softened some of the anger around the edges. Not approval. Definitely not approval. But understanding. "You've had feelings for her that long?" Malcolm asked quietly. Elijah laughed once under his breath. Exhausted. Defeated. She quoted my graduate thesis to a CFO last night from memory. Malcolm blinked. Oh, exactly. Rain rolled harder against the windows while Elijah moved toward the humidor near the bar. Out of habit, he handed Malcolm his favorite cigar without asking. The familiarity of the gesture hit both of them. Years of friendship sitting silently between them. Malcolm accepted it slowly. She's been in love with you since undergrad, you know? Elijah froze briefly while cutting the cigar. I know. Jesus Christ. The Valentino was my idea too, Elijah admitted. Malcolm stared at him in open disbelief. You are catastrophically gone. That finally pulled a real laugh out of Elijah. Brief, rough, human. Probably. Sheridan spent the morning pretending she wasn't distracted. It wasn't working. The Kingsley files sat spread across her dining table while rain painted silver patterns against the apartment windows. She'd circled 3 separate discrepancies in Kingsley's overseas shipping reports, but couldn't focus long enough to finish her analysis. Because every thought eventually circled back to Elijah. The balcony, the almost kiss, the keycard, the look on his face when she said not tonight. Her phone buzzed again. Malcolm. Still. Sheridan groaned softly and flipped the phone face down on the counter. Cowardly? Maybe. But she wasn't emotionally prepared for that conversation yet. A secure notification chimed across her laptop screen instead. Encrypted file from Danielle. Sheridan opened it immediately. Satellite images. Singapore port activity. Asset movement timestamps. In the margins, written in Elijah's handwriting. You saw this first. No signature. No explanation. Just acknowledgement. And somehow that felt more intimate than flirting. Sheridan leaned back in her chair slowly. God help her. She liked the way his mind worked almost as much as she liked the man himself. That realization should have terrified her more. The elevator chimed softly behind her. Sheridan frowned. Nobody had access to her penthouse floor except building security and... She turned sharply. Elijah stood near the dining table. Rain-darkened coat draped over one arm. Sleeves rolled up as if he'd been working for hours. The Kingsley files lay open in front of him. You circled the Singapore discrepancy before my analysts caught it, he said without preamble. Sheridan's pulse jumped instantly. How did you get in here? Elijah glanced up calmly. You gave me the keycard back. That is not an answer. No, he agreed. It's not. Sheridan crossed her arms slowly, trying very hard not to focus on how unfairly attractive this man looked standing in her apartment while rain hammered against the skyline behind him. You broke 12 years of boundaries this week, she said quietly. Why? This time Elijah didn't deflect, didn't flirt, didn't strategize. He just looked tired and honest. Because you left my ring sitting in my hand like a challenge, he said. Sheridan's breath caught slightly. Elijah stepped closer. Because you quoted my thesis from memory in front of Kingsley's CFO like it actually meant something to you. Another step. Because every time you bite your lip during meetings, I lose my train of thought for the next 10 minutes. The honesty hit harder than seduction ever could. Sheridan swallowed carefully as he stopped directly in front of her now. Close enough to touch. Still choosing not to. You kept count, she whispered. Elijah's expression shifted then. Years of restraint cracking visibly around the edges. Every day, the room went completely silent except for rain against glass. Sheridan's clutch slipped from her fingers onto the marble floor with a muted thud neither of them acknowledged. Elijah's hand finally settled against her waist. Careful at first, like he still wasn't fully convinced this was real. Sheridan curled both hands into his loosened tie, and that tiny movement snapped the last thread of control between them. The kiss wasn't soft. It was 12 years of restraint collapsing all at once. Elijah kissed her like a man who had spent years denying himself something essential and finally stopped trying. Bourbon, rain, champagne, frustration, want. Sheridan gasped against his mouth when his hand slid into her hair, and Elijah made a rough sound low in his throat that nearly unraveled her completely. The Kingsley files scattered across the table when he backed into it. Neither of them cared. You had a key this entire time? Sheridan whispered breathlessly against his jaw. Elijah's forehead dropped briefly against hers. Yes. And never used it? A long pause. Then quietly, I was trying very hard to be a good person. That nearly made her laugh. Nearly. Instead, Sheridan kissed him again. For 12 years, Sheridan Montgomery and Elijah King convinced themselves that timing was everything. That loyalty demanded silence. That some lines could never be crossed. But love has a way of refusing to stay hidden. Not behind boardroom doors. Not beneath front-page headlines. And not behind fear. Today, they stopped running. They stopped pretending. And with one kiss, they finally chose each other. But choosing love was only the beginning. Because tomorrow, the cameras will still be waiting. The headlines won't disappear. Questions will still come. And the world will demand answers neither of them is ready to give. Can their love survive the pressure? Or will everything they've built begin to unravel? Join me for the unforgettable conclusion in episode 4 of The Line We Cross. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes the best love stories are worth waiting for. Question of the day. Do you think Elijah and Sheridan made the right choice by finally giving in to their feelings? Or should they have kept pretending? I'll see you in episode 4.